Hi artists! Today we're going to practice 3 techniques using watercolor paints on small squares so that next time we can get ready to make our big paintings. Each of your 3 squares will have your name and the technique written out. The first one is wet paint on wet paper. The second will be to use salt on the paint. And then the third will be pressing down plastic wrap on the wet paint. Let's start with our first technique, wet paint on wet paper.
At your tables, you'll get your paint palette, a water cup with a small brush for your painting, and a big brush to brush water over your paper. So first thing I'm going to do is wake up my paints because they look a little dry right now. So I'm just going to take my plain brush and get some water in each color. Rinse it off, get some water in another color. Add your water. Okay, now I'm ready to get my big paintbrush. So this one is nice and big, so it's easier to spread water over our paint.
I'm going to brush water gently over my whole paper. You can decide if you want to paint in sections or you want to just go ahead and wet the whole piece of paper. That is up to you.
Just dip it. You don't need to dig or scoop. All you need to do is dip, because these paints, watercolor, a little bit goes a long way. So watch what happens. And then wash off my brush before I go into a new color. So when our paper is wet, it starts to move around by itself and blend. Colors that are close together on the color wheel or in the rainbow is going to blend and mix really nicely. But there's no right or wrong answer. However you would like to paint today, it's just experimenting and practicing so that next time I see you, we'll be able to paint on our big paper. After you're done with your first, then we'll go on to the salt one, number 2 for salt. So again, each paper is gonna be also the wet on wet technique. So I'm gonna go ahead and brush my paper with water and get some colors on there.
When you're ready to sprinkle your salt, you need to move quickly because it only works if your painting is still wet. So make sure there's still water on your paper, and as soon as you sprinkle salt on it, you can start to see it crystallize. When you're done with your second square, you're just going to leave the salt crystals on your paint because it needs to dry with it on there. For our third and final square, we are going to put plastic wrap on top of our wet painting. So again, I'm going to take my plain water and brush over my whole square. Then you will paint just like you did before. You can try out different color schemes, move your paintbrush around, making lines or dots.
Then you're going to take your plastic wrap. You're going to lay it down on top of your wet paint. Make sure that it's still wet. And then you can start to wrinkle it a little bit. And we are going to let it dry like that. When you have all 3 finished, keep the salt crystals on and your saran wrap. It needs to dry like that. You're going to keep it on your messy mat. Pinch the 2 sides so nothing falls. You can bring it to the drying rack.
When you're carrying it, we can turn it to fit on the side so that someone else can bring their painting too, and we can fit too on the shelf. When it's full and there's no more room, you can go ahead and put a shelf down. At sink number 1, you're going to put your brushes in the used brush bucket. It's either going to be this small one or the big blue bucket. There's already water in there, so our paintbrushes can soak with the hairs in the water. And then your water dirty cup will be dumped out and placed on the tray. If you have paint on your fingers, you can grab a wipe, pull out just one, and then wipe your fingers and wipe your table.